Throughout this pandemic, we've been dealing with dangerous misinformation. Misinformation, of course, is defined as anything I don't think is true. Whoever's saying it, that's how we all define it. But throughout this pandemic, we have heard repeatedly how we ought to constrain, limit, curtail, and censor misinformation. Well, finally, the good folks at Instagram have done the Lord's work. They have silenced that great offender. I'm going to show the tweet right here. It is the Cochrane collaboration. Yes, Cochrane, we got you. We got you. You weren't part of the dirty dozen, but you're an offender nonetheless. And Instagram, I hate to break it to you, but Instagram got you. This is, of course, absurd. Many of you will know that the Cochrane collaboration is a long-standing organization that provides high-quality meta-analysis and systematic reviews of popular biomedical topics. For many years, they were considered the gold standard of systematic appraisal. I still think they're very good. Do I think they're as good as they were in their heyday? Not so much. They've had some administrative problems, but I think they're still superb. I'll tell you what they're not. They're not dangerous misinformation. The folks at Instagram, they got it wrong. If I had to decide who is the best arbiter of scientific truth, would it be those people who've just been doing it a lot for many, many years, or would it be that new tech company Instagram? I don't have an Instagram account. I'm not interested in Instagram. I think this is totally absurd. If only there was somebody who saw this coming, who saw that, probably having a bunch of big technology firms and their staff with their own ideology and their own age mix might not be the best recipe for the fair and just appraisal of science. They might not be able to tell where legitimate debate ends and misinformation begins. Was there somebody who said that and wrote about it in, let's say, one, maybe two, maybe three op-eds on the topic, and maybe even a video on the topic? I don't know. But I can imagine that someone might have seen this coming. Why? Because tech companies, they're not in the business of regulating scientific truth from fiction. In fact, even scientists have historically had a hard time doing that. In a moment in time in science, truly revolutionary and ultimately true ideas can be seen as heretical. That's always been the case. Beyond that, there are some things that are demonstrably false and untrue. There are ideas that are really dangerous and incorrect. However, they are best refuted through argument and reason. That's the process of science, not through brute force, censoring, down-throttling, etc., etc. And here you see what happens when you play this game. Instagram has gotten it wrong. Instagram, and I just have to say, I told you so. I told you so. I don't know what to tell you. I told you so. You shouldn't do this. There are better ways to handle this. The better ways would be actually regulating these platforms. The problem with these platforms, of course, is not that some content is bad. You can never stop the human mind and human writing and human videos and human podcasts and human communication. You can never stop all the wrong ideas out there. What you can do is create algorithms that are not based solely on the consumption of attention. If you take away attention as the ultimate commodity, then crazy, angry, outrageous things will take a back seat to more sensible things. There are ways in which these platforms can be broken, regulated, that would actually lead to better public usage of these platforms. But actually going in line by line, deciding that Marty Macary's Wall Street Journal piece is wrong or this is right, that's not the way to do it. That's always been a fool's errand. Speaking of misinformation, I find it so ironic that the people who are the most ardent proponents that we ought to censor information that runs counter to our worldviews are really happy to cite just absolutely bad studies over and over. I regret doing this, but I took a look to see what people were talking about on Twitter. I saw an excellent tweet by Steph Barral. Maybe I'll put that tweet up here. It's about what Steph thinks might happen when we finally get some more information about masking school kids. Of course, the United States, I've talked about this. I wrote an article in The Atlantic on this. We are exuberant in the masking children business. We go against the World Health Organization, the European CDC. We mask under 6. Do we have any credible data to support that? Not at all. No, but don't let that stop anybody. Steph Barral speculates that even school-age masking, a policy that again is not based on any cluster randomized controlled trials, may someday be thought to be lacking in subsequent studies. I think it's a fair point of view. Steph is probably going to be vindicated. It might have a very marginal to negligible effect size, if at all, even in the terrible, confounded observational studies that will come forward. But in reply to this, it was amazing to me the sorts of studies people cite. Studies where they say it proves that masking is beneficial, but there's no control group. There's literally no group that didn't mask, that did other things similarly to assess the independent effect of masking. Now, that to me is, it's not even, there's no trial, there's no control group. It's sort of a very fundamental principle of science. You need to know what happened with this thing and have some sense of what happened without that thing to get a sense of what that thing does. It's not rocket science. It's literally something that I think infants develop when they are watching how the world works and trying to figure out causality. It's not so difficult. That was one example. The next example I saw somebody offered was a study that showed these interventions had a 90-some, they always make up some large number, some very large number benefit. But I looked at that study, and the study was a model saying what the benefit might be if a bunch of assumptions were true, but those assumptions were inputted by the person making the model and not really based on robust empirical data. So the study found what you wanted to find if you believed all those things that is literally the topic of the current debate. So that's not also persuasive to me. Can we just take a pause a minute and just remind ourselves that in medical science, there is a way in which you established that medical interventions and public health interventions work. You take a bunch of people, you randomly assign them to that intervention or not to do it, and you show that the group that did it had a better outcome than the group that didn't do it. It's called a randomized controlled trial. If an intervention is something that shouldn't just help the wearer or the user, but also other people around them, you randomize a cluster or group of people, and you do a cluster randomized trial, and you look for the outcome in that whole cluster. So whether or not it helps me on the way in or you on the way out, you're going to capture that in the cluster. That's how you adjudicate science. When you don't do those studies and you just keep citing bad studies, what am I to think? I don't know what to think. I just really think that, we can just all give up then. We could just throw in the towel. Science is over. There's nobody left who has any neurons still firing. And so we can just all agree that whatever cultural power and Instagram says is true, that's the truth. And, there's no other point of view. And I think that would be a very sad state, but it's rapidly approaching. So what did I think about Instagram censoring Cochrane? I don't know. Maybe TikTok will censor Harvard Medical School. I don't know. What's next? I don't know. Maybe the New England Journal of Medicine will get banned by Facebook. I don't know. As long as we're up in the ante, I don't know where we're going to stop on this, but it is ludicrous. Is it possible to referee scientific debates? I think it is, but I think it really requires a sense of wisdom and scientific experience that doesn't really come to somebody who's probably going to be the type of candidate who's starting out very early in their career in one of these tech companies. It really comes with having been in the science business for a long time, having been on both sides of debates, having lived long enough where you find yourself, you once believed something in science that was later put on its head. How did you feel when that was reversed, I think you need to have that kind of perspective. So, if anyone's really interested in the long arc of medical science and how it flip-flops, read the book that Adam Sifu and I wrote, Ending Medical Reversal by Johns Hopkins, or it's published by Johns Hopkins University Press. That's a good introduction to this topic. So those are my rough thoughts. Social media has proven that it's inadequate to handle misinformation. Handling misinformation is a bandage on it's a band-aid on a hemorrhage. It's not a tourniquet on the arm. The platform itself is a poisonous platform. It's running on algorithms that are poisonous. It needs some deep reform, and that reform isn't the sort of superficial veneer that censoring provides. And the people who have the appetite for censoring, I think, are wrong, and they are seduced by a culture where it is increasingly acceptable to ask that you don't expose yourself to ideas that conflict with your pre-existing views. It's become acceptable in this society. That's not acceptable by anyone who believes that they are a true thinker. You always seek out views that run against yourself so you can improve your argument, refine your thinking, and occasionally change your own mind when you are presented with better evidence. So I don't know what to say. Instagram, keep up the good work. Well, okay. If you like this video, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, comment, leave a message below. Until next time.